You know what, Caitlin? We should start. What do you think? What do you think? We should start? All right. Should we sing happy birthday to you even though it's a day late? Should we sing it even though it's a day late? All right. I checked with Caitlin. I was telling people I've been getting for the past 10 minutes, I've been getting our food's almost ready. Our food's almost ready text. So they'll be here. Don't worry. But glad you guys are here. Some of you planned ahead. That's how we can tell. We're looking at a story today with Martha and Mary, and all the Marthas are already here. That's good. You guys planned it, and you got here on time. So I asked Caitlin. Her birthday was yesterday, but I asked her if today we could do her birthday observed, and she said yes, we can. So we're going to sing happy birthday to Caitlin real quick. Is that cool? Caitlin, wave. I don't even know if everybody knows you. Wave. Caitlin's 9. Told her that's it. It's the last year. She's got to get a job, get her own place next year. 10's a big year. So Caitlin, we wish you well in this your last year before you hit double digits. So, all right. Let's sing happy birthday. Ready? Somebody else start. You got to start it. You're the singer. You don't have to finish it, but I'm for sure not starting it. Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Caitlin. Happy birthday to you. Cool. We love eating. We love birthdays. This is who we are. So I'm excited you guys are here. I'm going to open us up. I did this last week. There are some psalms that are kind of psalms of praise. And sometimes they're a good way to focus ourselves, to move ourselves from sort of the everydayness of the world into a time of worship. Because sometimes that language is different than what we would use. Maybe the language is different than what you used in the car on the way here. I don't know. But it's a good way to sort of center ourselves and say, this is an important time. This is an important moment. And we're doing something different. So if you guys will stand with me, Emma's going to bring up Psalm 50, right? Emma, it's in there. What happened? Did we lose all power? There we go. Psalm 50 is the only thing we have right now. That doesn't feel good. I know how to fix that. If you get at the top and you go to show, you move from Bible to show, you click on show. I'll show you how. All right, Psalm 50. Here we go. The mighty one, God the Lord, speaks and summons the earth from the rising of the sun to its setting. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God shines forth. Our God comes. He does not keep silence. Before him is a devouring fire. Around him, a mighty tempest. He calls to the heavens above and to the earth that he may judge his people. Gather to me, my faithful ones, who made a covenant with me by sacrifice. The heavens declare his righteousness, for God himself is the judge. Let's pray, and Justin will take us into worship. God, we thank you today, God, that you are here and that you are calling. God, I pray for us. We're here for a variety of reasons today. Some of us are here because somebody else made us come. Some of us are here because we wanted to see each other. Some of us are here because we have questions for you, things we want answered. But God, really, we're all here because you called us. You spoke to our spirits. And God, just like when you spoke to Lazarus and he woke up, God, I pray for us that as we hear you speaking to our spirits, that our spirits would wake up this morning. And God, just like Lazarus had these grave clothes that needed to come off so that he could live free, God, I pray that as we worship, the things that would hinder us, the things that would choke out your love in us and your love for us, God, I pray that those things would become untangled and we would be set free. I ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. earth rejoice. All the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light. Darkness tries to hide. He trembles at his voice. Trembles at his voice. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. And all will see how great is our God. Age to age he stands, and time is in his hands, beginning and the end, beginning and the end. The Godhead three in one, Father, Spirit, and Son. Lion and the Lamb, Lion and the Lamb, how great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. And all will see how great is our God. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. All will see how great is our God. Name above all names, worthy of all praise, and my heart will sing how great is our God. Have the name above all names, worthy of all praise, and my heart will sing how great is our God. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. And all will see how great is our God. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How
God his son, not sparing, sent him to die. I scarce can take it in, that on the cross my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin.
Palmer, can you bring? Okay, so Justin's going to keep playing. I was thinking through this verse. I was talking with somebody about this morning, but I talk with people about this a lot. Just the idea of like, how could God let me suffer is really difficult for people. If God loves me, how could he let me suffer? If God loves me, why would I have gone through this? I can't believe in a God that would allow me to experience this level of suffering. We were talking this morning about somebody who had lost a child, and it just wrecked their world. How could I understand a God who would allow that? Like, I did all the right things was the idea. I did all the right things, and this is what happens. And our conversation was really about the fact that, like, Jesus, the God that is expressed in Jesus, is really the only God that speaks to suffering by saying, I will go through it too. You will never go through this alone. I will experience everything, right? When I think that God, his son not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in. And here's the truth. Like, I don't know what that's like, and I don't want to know. I've not lost a child, and I don't want to lose a child. But I think that it is, we sing it, and we don't really embrace it because it's hard to understand that God could experience loss. And so here's what I want us to do. We're going to sing through that verse again. And this is what I would like for you to do. I'd like for you to either intercede for somebody you know who is suffering and struggling to seek God. So intercede for them just means pray for them. Just spend time, sing that verse for them. Ask God to make that verse true in their lives. Or if if you're experiencing some sort of loss, some sort of suffering, and you're like, I don't buy it. I don't buy that God gets that. I don't understand that kind of God. Then just pray for yourself and ask, say, God, make these words true for me. Does that make sense? So I just want you to grab hold of this verse as we sing it again, and grab hold of it for somebody, if it's you, if it's somebody else, who needs to know that God. All right? You good? Justin's going to take us through it again. You guys good? We're going to pull it up. Okay, let's sing through it again together.
And when I think that God his son not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art.
Thanks, Justin. You guys can have a seat. If you're in elementary school or below, you can go next door with Christy. You guys are going to have some fun today. It's going to be fun in there. Rest of you guys, we're going to have some fun today. It's going to be fun in here. Glad you guys are here. The good news is the smell of the food make me stop at some point. It's going to happen. Grab a seat, sit around your tables. Couple of announcements. One is I do want to remind you guys who've been sending this out in the newsletter. It's been scrolling on the screen. We have to select new administrative team members for our admin team. If you don't know about our admin team is essentially the people that don't work here that help make big decisions for the church, big picture stuff, financial stuff, charting those courses forward. They go on 2-year terms. This current admin team's 2-year term is up. If you're, I guess, here, Mark is sick. Mark's not here, right? So Mark Patterson is on the admin team. Nick, where's Nick? Nick Chinundit's on the admin team. Daniel White is on the admin team. And then stepping in, Christy Stouffer was on the admin team, but when she came on staff, we had to replace her. So stepping in has been Sarah Pallas. Sarah's been a great addition these past few months to our admin team. But we are taking new members, and this is the way it works. You nominate people that you think have character, integrity, reflect the values of Highlands. You cannot nominate yourself, and you cannot nominate someone in your house. That just makes it easier for us. But you think about people that have been here and that have demonstrated those things. And then we take all those nominees, and we're a small team. So it's never every nominee becomes a part of the team. We keep a pretty small team. But from those nominees, the staff and the current admin team look at those and make decisions for the admin team going forward. And don't worry if you're nominated. We talk to you first. We don't just assume that you're all in. So don't worry about that. We will talk to you first. So anyway, if you have people that you think would be good additions to that team, we want you to email those. Email those to Christy. Email them to Christy@highlandsmarietta.org. And we would love to know those by November 19th because we would love to be able to have those people in place going into 2024. Yes, you can nominate somebody that's already on the team. You can serve. People can serve back-to-back terms. Now, we'll talk with that admin team member, and they may say, "I appreciate being nominated, but I would like to not serve again," and we will give them that discretion. But for sure, you can nominate people that are already on the admin team. That's a great question from that beautiful lady in the front. So the other thing I want to mention is this weekend is Veterans Day. I think actual Veterans Day was yesterday. Is that right? Yeah. Whenever we talk about these sort of American-related holidays in church, right? Like there's a little bit of an interesting conversation to have there because, to be honest, like every sort of power entity and structure set up in this world in some way contradicts Jesus, right? Like in some way contradicts Jesus. And so we're actually going to talk a little bit about that today in the passage we're looking at. But at the same time, there are things because of where we live and because of who we are that we're just blessed by, right? Like the opportunity to worship freely, the opportunity to worship without danger to our bodies or being thrown in jail, the opportunity to choose freely who we worship, and people that allow us to do that, we're for, is what I would say. And so Veterans Day for me is a chance to say to people that have looked around and said, I will lay down my life so that you can continue to have a freedom that you wouldn't know what to do without, right? I wouldn't know what to do without the freedom to gather together every Sunday morning. And so we get a chance to say, you laying down your life so that we can worship freely. It's a pretty Jesus-like element, right? We value that. And so I know Brian Chandler's here. Brian's a veteran. Mike Cox is not here this weekend, but you guys know Mike. Mike's also a veteran. Do we have any other veterans in this room? I don't know if we do or not. I know a lot of you guys have family members that have served. I know the Pattersons have Sam, who's serving, the Patterson's son. And I know some of the rest of you do. And so I just want to take a minute and I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you, Brian. You're in the room. So I'm going to say thank you, Brian, for doing that. We're blessed by that beyond what we know. And there are tons of people that are blessed by that who will never know you. And it's a real Christ-like thing to do. And so we're super thankful for that. And those of you who've given your family members to do that, we are super thankful for that. So that being said, we are looking at John. It's interesting. The book of John, we're at about the halfway point. And the first half of John covers about 3 years. And the second half of John covers about 1 week, maybe a week and a half, right? And so we're really going to dig in here in this last part of John, because the last part of John is really the last week of Jesus's life. We can tell just through the way John sets things up is that Jesus, we're going to see today that Passover is about to happen, and John mentions 3 Passovers in his story of Jesus, and that's kind of where we get the idea that Jesus's ministry life was about 3 years, was roughly about 3 years. But now we're at the last Passover before Jesus's death and resurrection. And if you remember, last week we looked at Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. And if you were here, you might remember that I talked about that when I was in college, kind of one of the weird things I did a lot of weird things in college, but one of the weird things I did was that I would do this thing we called it open air preaching. I don't know what you call it. Annoying, maybe? I don't know. But we called it open air preaching. And so you go to the free speech area at the University of Georgia, who I think also won last night. I don't know if you paid attention to that. So I have some confusion about celebrating patriotism, but not at all about Georgia football. So you just need to know that about me in church. It's because I prayed a lot for these years, you guys. So we'd go down to the Tate Center, we'd stand up on the stage, and we'd just start talking about Jesus. We'd just start talking about Jesus, and because college is weird, because the University of Georgia is weird, people would stop and they would talk to you. And so I started sharing with you guys about this last week, and I said a lot of times, what I said was 98%. That's obviously not a clear statistic, but the vast majority of people that I encountered that have problems with Jesus, problems with God, problems with Christianity, it was ultimately related to the fact that they'd either been let down by somebody in the church or they'd felt let down by God when they had prayed for something, and that they'd experienced the brokenness of life. And then within the brokenness of life, they had to create a narrative, and their narrative was God is not real. That God is not a God I would want to follow, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there was another type of person that I would encounter when I was preaching in the open air. And I was thinking about that kind of person this week, because that was the kind of person. And I remember one time somebody just literally said this to me, and I was like, oh, okay, like this makes sense to me. That was the type of person who would just say, listen, I don't care if there's a God or not. I just don't want someone else telling me what to do. Like, that's it. I just don't want somebody else telling me what to do. I like my life. I like this part of my life, particularly in college, right? I don't want someone else telling me what to do. And that, honestly, is still a reflection of brokenness, right? There's still a hint and an echo of brokenness in that kind of response to a God. Because the idea is this. The idea is like, well, if there is a God, there are probably things that I'm doing that God doesn't like. Right? I'm probably not batting 1,000. And so now I'm going to have to deal with my own brokenness. And the truth is, I don't want to. I don't want someone else to tell me how to do that. I don't want someone else. Have we lost the slides? You want to stick with me here? You good? You good? All right, cool. So go ahead, you can pull up. You can pull up the talk. We're good. So I don't want somebody telling me what to do. You know, and there are people, and a lot of them are people in this church, and a lot of them are people that people in this church know, because we've talked about kind of our narratives as people in the Highlands, that there are people who would say, you know what, I like Jesus, but I don't like Christians, or I don't like Christianity, or I don't like church. And some of those people have a good reason to say that, right? Because some people who say they're Christians, some people who follow Christianity would say that, or say or do things that contradict who Jesus is, right? But some people, when they're saying that, when they're saying, I like Jesus, but I don't like Christianity, what they're really saying is this: I don't like the exclusive claims of Christianity. I don't like that. I don't like the idea that Jesus is God. I like the idea that Jesus is a teacher. I don't like the idea that Jesus says, worship me. I like the idea that Jesus says, give to the poor. right? And that's what we're about to encounter in this passage. Is here's the truth. That's not a Christian problem. That's a Jesus problem. It's a Bible problem, right? And I've also encountered people, and maybe you have encountered people who would say things like, well, I just don't believe those parts of the Bible. And to people who would say, well, I don't believe those parts of the Bible, as I would say, well, how do you choose to believe the parts of the Bible you choose to believe? And ultimately, what that comes down to is, well, I choose to believe the parts of the Bible that I like. I choose to believe the parts of the Bible that agree with me, right? Which is what most of us want to do. Most of us want a God who agrees with us. But Christianity doesn't really leave you that, right? And that's what we're going to look at in this passage. Today, really, we're looking at where we stand in the midst of our brokenness in relationship to Jesus's claims about himself. Like, where am I going to stand in relation to Jesus's claims about himself? Not what the church does, not what bad acting Christians do, but just what Jesus says and does about himself. Because really, leading up to this point in the passage, we're going to start in the middle of chapter 11, but really chapters 9 and 10, if you remember, are people coming to Jesus and they're saying, who do you think you are? And Jesus is saying, like, I am one with the Father. I am the good shepherd. I am the gate, right? We remember all those things. And people saying, like, what gives you the right? And Jesus saying, well, the right that I have is I have the power over life and death. And I'll show that to you, right? I have the power over life and death. And what are we going to do with those things? And we're really going to look at kind of three options for what we do with those things. And then we're going to look at what Jesus does with those things. If you want, you've got pieces of paper with kind of an outline on your table. And so if you want that as a way to follow along, you can. But we're going to start in John chapter 11, verse 45. I think it's going to come up on the screen. And it says this. This is after Jesus has raised Lazarus from the dead. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Right? They're tattling on Jesus. Can you imagine? Right? We're going to tell the Pharisees what you did. And what are they going to tell him? He rose this guy from the dead. He raised somebody up from the dead. So the chief priests and the Pharisees hear this, and it says the chief priests and the Pharisees, these are the religious people, they gather this council and they said, well, what are we to do? For this man performs many signs. And if we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And the Romans will come take away both our place and our nation. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, said to them, you know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish. He did not say this of his own accord, but being a high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who were scattered abroad. So from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. I just want to say a few things about this portion, because right here, what we're seeing, we're basically going to see three types of people in this passage. We're going to see three types of responses to Jesus's claims about himself. And this is the first group, right? This is the chief priests and the Pharisees, right? And their response to Jesus is to cling to power. That's their response. They will cling to power, right? Jesus is making claims. Jesus is saying, I'm God, I'm the gate. Jesus is raising people from the dead. Jesus is demonstrating a power that they don't have. And it's making them uncomfortable, right? And here's what I would say. Religious people cling to power to solve their brokenness. Religious people cling to power to solve their brokenness. They say, I need to be in charge, right? People are mad at Jesus because he is claiming an authority that is greater than theirs. Right? Jesus isn't saying just you should love people. He's saying, I am God. I hold the power over life and death. And oftentimes, what you'll encounter with religious people, and I'm using religious in the terms not just of people like you would think of like in a church or devoutly religious people. I just mean people that are religious about anything. I mean people that are so committed to their way of thinking, their way of doing as the one right way, right? Will cling to power because those are people that believe everything will be fine as long as I'm in charge. Everything will be fine as long as I'm in charge. And we can be religious about a lot of things. You can be religious about your family. You can be religious about your marriage. You can be religious about your workplace. You can be religious about your home. You can be religious about the political structures in your community or in our country or in the world. And you can say, everything will be fine as long as people like me are in power, or as long as I'm calling the shots, or as long as I'm the one who gets to remain in control. Right? People that are like this like to be the smartest person in the room. They like to be the people that say, I know what's really going on here. They like to make other people feel bad about themselves if they disagree. Right? That's the goal. Some of you guys are here because you were at a church with people like this. Right? Some of you quit going to church because you were at a church with people like this, who were like, you have to bow to me. You have to do what I want. You need to dress like I want. You need to talk like I want. You need to worship like I want, because that's what it means to be okay. Right? People like this live in a if I win, you lose. If you win, I lose culture. Right? People like this live in a world where everything is about power. Right? And right now in our culture, there's a lot of people who live like this. Right? Everything's a power narrative. Right? Everything's about the oppressed and the oppressor. Right? That's what everything is about. And the problem is we need to get the oppressed people to be the oppressors, because they would be better oppressors than the current oppressors. Right? That's the idea. We live in a world that says it's not a problem of power. It's a problem of which race is in power, which gender is in power, which socioeconomic group is in power. And if we could just flip it, then things would work out. Right? It is all about power. And that's the way that these guys are approaching Jesus. They're saying this is a power issue. Jesus is going to make things bad for us, right? What they're saying is he's going to stir stuff up. We've got a good power structure going here. If he stirs stuff up, Rome's going to get mad, and Rome's going to drop the hammer on us, and we don't want that. We're going to lose our power, and Rome's going to gain power, and they're going to destroy us. And this actually isn't too far off, because this actually happened about 30, 40 years later, is that you had this Jewish uprising that happened, and Rome came and basically decimated them, decimated the Jewish people. And so they weren't without reason to think this. They weren't without reason to think Jesus is going to cause this thing to happen that's going to take away our power and our comfort. Right? Because that happens a lot when things start getting stirred up. And Jesus was stirring stuff up. And I told you guys, this is a quick digression here, because I think it's important for us to talk about. I would say this. Christians are always going to have a somewhat difficult relationship with structures of power. Christians are always going to have a difficult relationship with structures of power. But it's not as simple as we want to make it out to be. Right? Some of us think, well, Christians should always oppose the government, right? Or some of us think, well, Christians should always oppose the government if that political party is running it, right? Some of us, we say things and it makes me cringe, right? Like I've seen every bumper sticker. I've seen Jesus is Republican. I've seen Jesus Democrat, Jesus Socialist, Jesus Capitalist, Jesus Libertarian. I've seen them all. What I notice is nobody has a bumper sticker where Jesus doesn't match what they already think, right? That's the problem. I don't see many Republicans being like, yeah, but Jesus was a Democrat. I don't see many Democrats being like, yeah, but Jesus was a Republican. Right? No, he wasn't any of those things. Like Jesus was the Father's Son. Jesus was the one with power over life and death, and Jesus was the one who was worthy of worship because Jesus was God in human form. Right? He's not any of those things. But because of that, we're going to live in a world where our relationship with government is going to be weird, right? Because sometimes we may disagree with our government ideologically, but in practice, we'll live our lives out in a way that allows us to live at peace with people, because that's what the scriptures tell us to do. Sometimes we'll agree with our government ideologically, but in practice, we need to take a stand that is different, and we need to be willing to deal with the consequences of that. I want to tell you guys a crazy story because it's Veterans Day. I'll tell you a crazy story. I heard this last week. Somebody asked me, a friend of mine asked me, he's like, did you decide to be a chaplain because now you can tell Army stories to people? And half, yes. But I heard this crazy story last week about this Army chaplain, right? There was this Army chaplain that was stationed in Iraq and was with a group. And this guy used to be Special Forces. And now he was a chaplain. We have a guy in our group who used to be a Navy SEAL and is now a chaplain. So it happens. Stuff like that happens a lot. And so this guy was Special Forces. He was a chaplain. He was with a group of guys, and they were pinned down, and they couldn't get out. And so he grabbed a gun, and he saved them. He shot, he fired, he took care of business, and he got those people out. He was awarded multiple medals as a result of this, in the same day he was discharged. Because as a chaplain, you can't do that. Like you are a non-combatant, and you can't become a combatant. I know, it doesn't make your head go, huh? Yeah, mine too. Right? But that's the tricky part. As a chaplain, he's a non-combatant. As a believer, he saw people in need and said, I can help, I have to help. And it didn't matter. And he lost his job, and I'll bet he doesn't regret a second of it. This is the weird relationship that we're going to have because we don't follow any government structure. You should be uncomfortable with every government structure. You should be. You should be uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that you should always be rebellious. Right? So anyway, that was just a little side note for Veterans Day. There you go. For these people, Jesus was dangerous because Jesus was claiming an authority over them and ultimately over Rome and Rome's emperors. Right? And when Jesus starts to make that claim over religious people, they get uncomfortable. Because religious people follow Jesus because it makes them look good. Religious people follow Jesus because it gives them power and it gives them superiority. And on the org chart, they look better and they sit higher up, right? They're Caiaphas. They're like, these people don't know what they're talking about, right? I'm the person with the special knowledge. And what's crazy about religious people is just like Caiaphas, sometimes religious people will say things. This is what really throws you off. Sometimes they'll say things and you're like, holy smokes, that's spot on. And it confuses you. Right? Because God is always playing chess, man. God will use anybody and anything to speak truth and to accomplish his goals. And that's what's happening here with Caiaphas. Right? But ultimately, religious people don't like giving Jesus full control and full power. And when people do it, they call them fanatics. They're like, you went too far. That was too much. Right? You spent time with that person, right? You went to that place, right? That's too much. You're a fanatic. A lot of times they're like, you gave away that much money, right? That's what we're going to see later on in this story. It's too fanatic, right? They don't like when people are fully confident in their commitment to God because religious people want everybody else to be nervous because that's part of how they hold on to their power. They want you to wonder if God loves you. They want you to think that God only loves you if you're like them. Right? And to go fully after Jesus with abandon, like we're going to see somebody do in a few minutes, that cuts against all their power. Because that means they can't control you. Right? And here's what I would say if you're clinging to power somewhere. One is I get it. This is how I parent. Where's Will? See in here? He'll tell you. This is how I like to parent. This is my comfort zone to parenting, cling to power. It's you need to do this because I said so. You need to go there because that's what I said and stop asking questions. Right? I get it. I get what that's like to want to cling to power. But clinging to power kills love. Clinging to power in a relationship kills love. Right? Because that's the only reason people will stay connected to you, is because you have power over them. And you're not always going to have power over them. And they're not always going to sit underneath it. And you will lose the relationship when you lose the power. There's no answer for your brokenness in claiming power. In marriage, in family, in friendship, it just makes you a tyrant. It just makes you a tyrant. Don't question me. Don't ask about my brokenness. You're the problem. You did this. If you didn't do this, I wouldn't have done this. It just divides. Clinging to power kills love. All right, so we're jumping back in. We're going to see two other groups I told you. So these people say, so from that day on, they made a plan to put him to death. So Jesus, therefore, no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there to the region near the wilderness to a town called Ephraim. And there he stayed with the disciples. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and many went up from the country of Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. They were looking for Jesus, one another, as they stood in the temple. What do you think, that he will not come to the feast at all? Now the chief priests and Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was, he should let them know so they might arrest him. I also think it's interesting that these people are like, they're doing all the worship acts, and they're in the back of their mind, and they're like, and we're going to kill Jesus. That's part of the plan. It was funny. I was talking the other day. I was talking yesterday with somebody, and they brought up to me, they were like, there are people who think I go to church once a week, and that makes up for everything else that I do. And I was like, yeah, there are. And there are going to continue to be those people. There have always been those people, and there will continue to be those people. It's a good sign of the religious that that's what they think. So now we're into chapter 12. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus has raised from the dead. It's really funny. Like, I always think it's funny. It's like, did they need to be reminded? Like, he just raised him from the dead, and I feel like you wouldn't forget that, right? But John's going to say it multiple times in this passage. He's going to say, Lazarus, the one Jesus raised from the dead, right? That's a reminder about who Lazarus is. Maybe there were a lot of Lazaruses around then, and John needs to clarify, but I always think it's funny. But that's just what Lazarus is now. Lazarus is now the one Jesus raised from the dead. And honestly, when I think about that, I kind of wish, I wonder what the comma is after my name. Like, I wonder what Brandon Land says. David Scott, comma. You don't have to say it. Don't be rude. We're in church. I wonder what the comma is after my name. I wonder what the comma is after your name. And I hope it's David Scott, the one Jesus raised from the dead. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great if that was the comma after your name? David Scott, the one who was changed by Jesus. The old church that I was at, Stonebridge, some of y'all were there. There was a woman there. She's still there. Her name is Ashley Saunders. Ashley and I were in high school together. She was a sophomore, or she was a year behind me in school. And probably a couple of months after I'd been there, she walked up to me in church. And I was like, hey, how are you? And she was like, hey, how are you? And we talked for a minute, and then she just was looking at me. She said, hey. She sighed. She goes, are you different now than you were in high school? And it was a good question, because if I was going to work in a church you were at, you would want me to be different now than I was in high school. And it was fun to be able to say, I am. I am different now. I am different. Jesus changed my life. He changed it forever. All right? Some people wonder, why do I worship with my hands up? Why do I worship and get on my knees sometimes? Sometimes that'll happen for me. That's because, you guys, I know how bad I was. Like, some of y'all just don't know how bad you were. Like, some of y'all just don't know that you need a comma after your name. It's way tougher to have been a good person and be thankful for what Jesus has done for you than to be a wretch and be thankful for what Jesus has done for you. Anyway, sorry. So they gave a dinner for him there, which is a good thing to do when somebody's risen from the dead. If somebody's risen from the dead, you should have a dinner party for them. We sang happy birthday to Caitlin. That was sufficient. I don't know that there's a resurrection song, but you should for sure have dinner for somebody who was raised from the dead. Martha served, because that's how Martha do. And Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at the table. I have a friend, my buddy CJ. We talked about Lazarus a couple weeks ago, and he said to me, I'll bet nobody reclined like Lazarus after he was raised from the dead. All right, Lazarus is like, whatever. Like, Jesus didn't go a lot of places, but what's funny is we'll find out, like, they're trying to kill Lazarus too. And you think Lazarus is like, go for it. I already came back once. Let's go. Right? Like, Lazarus is maybe like, I'll bet if they kill me, Jesus, bring me back again. It's no big deal. Nobody reclined like Lazarus, whom Jesus raised from the dead. Mary, who is different than Martha and different than Lazarus, because family members are not all the same. If you have one, you know it. Mary, therefore, took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard, which is probably my least favorite thing to say in the entire Bible. It never rolls off my tongue. Pure nard. And anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, he who was about to betray him, said, why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. John telling tales about Judas. And having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put in it. Jesus said, leave her alone so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For the poor you will always have with you, but you do not always have me. When the large crowds of the Jews learned that Jesus was there, they came not only on account of him, but also to see Lazarus, who Jesus raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to put Lazarus to death as well, because on account of him, many of the Jews were going away and believing in Jesus. So what are we doing in relation to Jesus' claims about ourselves, right? You have this first group who's trying to cling to power. Kind of the second group I want to talk about, we're going to talk about Judas, and then we're going to go back to Mary and a little bit of Lazarus. But the second group of people I want to talk about is people who cling to protection. That when Jesus wants to make claims on their lives, they cling to protection. And generally, we don't know a ton about Judas, right? And that tends to be true about these people. We don't know a ton about them because they don't tell us a ton about them. Why? Because they're busy protecting themselves. But generally, these are people who have been hurt in some way. These are beat up people, right? Because beat up people learn to protect themselves, right? Beat up people say, protection, I'm never going to be in power. And so the best way that I can deal with my brokenness is to hide it. The best way I can deal with my brokenness is just to protect myself. And they would say, if you can't find me, you can't hurt me. You can't find me. You can't hurt me. Judas hid. That's what we know. Like, think about the number of things you know that Judas ever said. There aren't a lot of them. This is what we know about Judas. Judas was taking things. He was stealing things. He wasn't talking to anybody about it. Right? When he did speak, he spoke out in judgment, never in terms of talking about himself. Right? Judas hid. Some of us hide. Some of us hide. Some of us hide in plain sight. Some of us hide in this room. Some of us will sit at lunch today and not say a word that is true. We might say all the right things, but we won't say a word that is true. Right? Because oftentimes, people that are protecting themselves, they've learned all the right things to say. They've learned those things. Some of you have kids like this. Some of us have kids like this. Who, like, you can tell when you're talking to them about something hard, they go sub-level. They're just like, and they're just waiting to say the right thing, but they're not going to engage. Some of you have marriages like this. Some of you have people at work like this. Right? They like to look and like they're doing the right thing, and they like to say that they're doing the right thing. They like to appear altruistic, right? Well, I'm not going to bother anybody. I don't want to burden them with my things. It would just be better if I stayed away this Thanksgiving. I'm not going to talk because they don't want to hear my complaints. And if I do, they're just going to say whatever. I'm going to tell you, as the loud one oftentimes, man, the quiet person looks a lot better after you've said something stupid. You're like, God, I said something stupid. They didn't. And you know what they're thinking? You know what the quiet person is thinking? They said something stupid and I kept my mouth shut. I'm better than them. Right? And that's Judas. Judas isn't doing anything, but he knows how to make it look like he's better than the other person. What's interesting about this is John says, well, Judas said it, but the truth is we have this story in all four Gospels, and all the disciples get mad at Mary. All of them get mad at Mary. You guys were here last week. If you remember, I said when Jesus called Lazarus out of the grave, the way it's described is like he was snorting like an angry animal. Some of you guys remember I shared that last week. That same phrase is used about the disciples in response to Mary when she does this. Is that they're all mad, right? So it's not just Judas, right? It's these other people, right? It's these people that are like, do not express yourself fully. That is gross. Like, how could you share so openly? That is uncomfortable, right? Why don't you just do the right thing? Right? This is too much. If following Jesus means I have to raise my hands up in the air, if following Jesus means I have to say no to things, right? If following Jesus means that it's going to make people uncomfortable, I'll just find another way to give my money to the poor. Because that's something people will look at and they'll find impressive. They won't judge me. They'll think I'm great. Right? That other thing will make them uncomfortable. I can't remember if I shared this with you guys this week because that's the age I'm getting to. I can't remember if I shared this with you guys last week, but I went to lunch with a friend we were talking about Highlands. We were talking about y'all. And this isn't necessarily a friend who likes church. And he said to me, did I share this story last week, Jane? He said to me, like, wouldn't it be better for them to just go do something else? Like, wouldn't it be better? Like this friend said to me, he said, come on, hour and a half. Wouldn't it be better for them to just go better themselves, like take an art class? Like do something like that. And then they could just better themselves. And that was interesting because I was looking across the table at my friend, and I generally like to be polite in those conversations. I generally like to see somebody else's point of view. And I was just like, no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be better. Because abundant life doesn't come from doing good things. Abundant life comes from being part of something transcendent. And without Jesus, you're not going to be a part of something transcendent. You can do all the good deeds in the world. You can show up. This is why we talk about service is service. And I tell you guys, the first most important part of understanding service is this, is it's an act of worship. Because if it's not just an act of worship, it's just a good deed. And other people do good deeds better than us. There's tons of them. I can give you all the organizations. But if we're doing it at the feet of Jesus, it becomes transcendent. And that is the way to abundant life. Right? There's no answer for your brokenness in building good structures around yourself for your own protection. There's no answer for your brokenness because you will never be able to protect yourself enough. Do you know what percentage of people are going to die? Yeah, it's 100%, including our buddy Lazarus, whom Jesus raised from the dead. There is no protection that will keep you. There's this crazy thing. Jane and I were talking to somebody about this week. I remember when I read about this, how agoraphobia works, right? How agoraphobia works is that you've probably been through a crisis and then you drive somewhere and you're feeling stressed out and you're feeling anxious and you get to this place and you think, I can't encounter all these people. I can't go in there. I can't be a part of that. And so you tell yourself, okay, good. I'm going to give myself permission to not go in there and not be a part of that. And so you drive home and you close yourself up in your house by yourself and you feel better and you feel safe. And so the next time you want to go out and you feel a little bit unsafe, you tell yourself, oh, last time I felt so good when I stayed home. And you end up protecting yourself to death. And that's what happens. I don't want to feel unsafe. I don't want to feel unprotected. I don't want to feel nervous or anxious. Right? And it always makes me think of Finding Nemo, right? You can't let nothing happen to him because then nothing will happen to him. You will waste your life trying to protect yourself. You will waste your life trying to be a good person in public, but never being a true person in public. So when it comes to responding to Jesus' claims on lives, right, we can cling to power. We can say, no, Jesus, I want to be in charge. We can cling to protection. We can say, no, Jesus, that's too far from me. I don't want to do that. I came to you to be a good person. I didn't come to you to look like this idiot Mary. Or we can cling to Jesus. Or we can cling to Jesus. It's interesting. Mary throws herself at Jesus' feet, we're told. Right? And there's a lot of social stuff in that maybe we'll talk a little bit about it. But the thing I want you to know is that sometimes the word that is used to describe worship in the New Testament is a Greek word that means to throw yourself at the feet of. Right? To throw yourself at the feet. Right? That's what it means to cling to Jesus. Somebody was asking me a couple of weeks ago. They said, well, how do I stay close to Jesus? Well, you throw yourself at Jesus' feet with abandon. Right? And the people that cling to Jesus are the people who embrace but don't excuse their brokenness. Embrace but don't excuse their brokenness. Right? They embrace, I am not the power, but they don't hide it. I've got to deal with it. I'm not powerful enough to save myself, but I can't just hide my failings. I've got to deal with it. Because Jesus is the only answer to our brokenness. Jim Elliot was a missionary who died, was not protected. And this is what he said. He said, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Jim Elliot knew the statistics on how many people die. He knew them. He was like, I can't keep it. I can't keep this life. If I try to protect myself and that's my goal, if I just try to protect my family and that's my goal, if I just try to keep myself from pain and that's my goal, I'm going to lose anyway because it comes for us all. But if I just jump into that, right? If I just say to myself, for me, to live as Christ and to die as gain. To live as Christ and to die as gain. Then I can go places only dead people go. I can go places that only dead people go, and only dead people go to places of resurrection. You cannot resurrect if you don't die. Right? When you cling to Jesus, it looks uncomfortable. I want to tell you that. This was uncomfortable. If somebody ran in here right now, weeping, broke a box of perfume over Chris Palace's body, sat at his feet, and began to wipe his feet with their hair, we would be uncomfortable. Like you can tell yourself, oh, it's the culture, blah, blah, blah. No, it wasn't. Everyone was uncomfortable. Everyone was uncomfortable. I'll bet Martha was like, oh, gosh, here she goes again. It was uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because it's unconditional. It's uncomfortable because it's unconditional. Mary says, I'm going to give him everything. So the idea was this, without giving you guys too much, without taking up too much of our time, this box of perfume that Mary had was probably an inheritance. It was probably the thing that if her family hit a famine, they had that they could sell to make sure that they were okay. That's probably what that was. Nobody had just a year's worth of wages of perfume sitting around, right? Like imagine having just like most of you, think about what you make in a year. You don't have it just sitting back there somewhere to throw around, right? Most of us don't. And that's what she had. This was like in case things go bad, this is how we're going to survive. And Mary was like, nope, yours. Unconditional. Right? Unconditional. It was inexplicable. Right? It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And if you cling to Jesus unconditionally, people are going to look at your life and say, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why are you not doing this? Why are you digging in? Why are you not giving up? Right? But it's beautiful and it's eternal. Jesus said people are going to talk about her forever. And we do, right? Mary and Lazarus, right? Mary and Lazarus. Isn't it funny that Lazarus is the one who rose from the dead, but Mary's the one that he said people are going to talk about her forever? Right? Because both of them let go of this life for a better one. And what's probably more amazing about Mary is Mary didn't do it because she rose from the dead. She did it because she saw Jesus raise somebody else from the dead, right? It wasn't even Mary's personal experience. Mary witnessed what Jesus did in somebody else's life, somebody she loved, and she said, I'm all in. And that's probably what made it more beautiful, right? There's a point at which Jesus says to Thomas later on, we'll see this, and he's going to say to Thomas, he's going to say, blessed are you because you have seen and you believe, but more blessed are people that have not seen and yet believe. More blessed are people that trust me in the middle of the junk because they haven't seen me save them yet. It was easy for Lazarus to recline. It was just easier for him. But Mary's was probably more beautiful. There are people that are looking at your life to understand the life of Jesus. There are people that are looking at your life to understand the life of Jesus. And if you're clinging to power, that's what they're going to think the life of Jesus is about. And if you're clinging to protection, that's what they're going to think the life of Jesus is about. But being fully alive because you've given him everything is the most compelling story that you can tell. There was this driver, I learned about this week. I'm getting somewhere towards an end. I don't know how close I am. There was a driver, a Formula One racer from Brazil. His name was Senna. There's a documentary out there about him. I've not seen this documentary. I just heard somebody talking about him when I was researching this topic this week. His name's Senna, right? He was from Brazil. He was trying to break into Formula One because there's not a lot of Brazilian Formula One racers. He's really talented, but also he was like a fervent believer in Jesus, right? He just loved Jesus. He was outspoken about Jesus. And there was this other racer that they interviewed who was a German atheist who was a Formula One racer. And he said about Senna, he said, Senna should not be allowed to drive because Senna believes in Jesus and Senna doesn't fear death. And that is dangerous on the racetrack. He said, somebody like that shouldn't be allowed here. Right? Would people say that about you? Would people say they don't fear death? They don't fear a financial crisis. They don't fear another horrible disease. They're not afraid. And that makes me uncomfortable. Would they say that about you? Would they say that about me when they're looking to know what the story of Jesus is? And ultimately, will we quit putting off death when it comes to following? Right? Will we quit putting off death when it comes to following so we could be people that aren't afraid? Right? If you look at Senna, I'm going to tell you guys this, and then I'm probably going to wrap up. But when you look at Senna, here's the truth. Guess what? He died racing. He did. So maybe the German atheist was right in that point. But he died racing. And I think what's tough about that for us is like we don't want him to die racing. We want him to just win. Right? But ultimately he won. Ultimately he won. And I think until we shift our thinking, right? And we can't wait to become like Lazarus. God loves what Mary is doing. So how? Or why? Why should we cling to Jesus in the midst of our brokenness over power and over protection? Because power and protection feel good. Why in my relationship to my kids should I quit clinging to my own power and start clinging more to Jesus? Why in relationship to how I deal with other people around this table should I quit clinging to my own protection and start clinging to Jesus? Because Jesus is the God who decided not to cling to his power or his protection. He doesn't ask you to do anything that he's not going to do first. Right? There's no other God that does that. There is no other God who looked at your brokenness and said, I'll give up all power. I'll give up all protection. Right? Caiaphas says it. He says it's better for one man to die than for the whole nation to die. And Jesus is like, yep, you're right. And I'm that one man. And I'm going to do it. Because it is better. Because we could all die in our brokenness and it wouldn't do anything for us. But he gives up his power. That's the craziest thing to me. You know, you think about this idea of like it's all these beliefs in God, right? Especially right now, people would be like, see, religion, it just creates so much chaos. It creates all these power structures. It creates all this injustice. It creates all this death and destruction. And I would say 99% of it, you're correct. But there's one God out there who says, no, to follow me, you lay down everything. No, I came not to be served, but to serve. And the greatest will be the least. And the reason Christianity gets lumped into those other things is because we're not holding so tightly to Jesus. Instead, we're holding to our power and we're holding to our protection and we're calling it holding to Jesus. There is no other God who is like him. Right? It is not because I can say, I don't say that to say to you, see, you need to be like me to follow Jesus. No, I just say there's nobody else like him. There's no other God that says, I will give up my power, I will give up my protection so that you can live. But if you're going to follow me, you have to give up your power and you have to give up your protection. You can't do both. A relationship does not work. Some of you have been in this relationship. A relationship does not work when one person gives 100% and the other person only gives 99%. It's a tyranny. That 1% is a tyranny. Jesus is the only place where your brokenness becomes a part of your story and not the defining part. You want to despise Jesus, deny your brokenness, and try to hold on to your own life. If you want to love Jesus, embrace your brokenness and hold nothing else back from him. Stay close. Because that's how Jesus loves us. He embraces our brokenness and he holds nothing back from us. You can come to God for all the things he gives you, but you won't ever fully connect with God until you do that. Right? You're never fully God if you're conditioned by cost, control, or guarding your heart. Jesus is not a means to an end. Jesus is the end of the story. And until we let every other part go, we'll never experience the life that he comes to bring. All right. Can you go up a couple of slides? I don't have this part written down. We're going to finish up here. Move up. Go. Next slide. Por favor. Yeah. Okay, so what about us? Right? So here's some things. Justin's going to play one more song. You want to come up? We don't do that part well. Sometimes I watch these pastors on Instagram, and like suddenly you'll see somebody like just appear behind them at the end of the sermon. Justin could do that well, but I'm not good at it. So here's the what about us. Where are you broken? Where are you broken? Right? Where in your life right now do you just need to admit, I am no good at that? Right? I'm going to just embrace it. I'm no good. I'm no good there. Where are you holding back from God? What parts of your life are you like, I want the power or I need the protection? And where can you not see God working things to the good? And I thought about that last part where Jesus God is always playing 3D chess, right? God is always playing 3D chess. Caiaphas is like, oh, we're going to do this and blah, 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 and we're going to work all these things and we're going to kill him. And God's like, yeah, you are. You're going to do all those things. You're going to do them on your own. But I'm ultimately working over all of this. I had a friend who said this. Bless you. I had a friend who said this. God doesn't make all the calls, but he makes the final one. Right? If you ask the question, do people have free will, or is God ultimately working things to his purpose? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. If you want to debate that, I know some great seminaries you can go to, but that's the answer. But sometimes we can't see that. Sometimes we can only see these momentary broken decisions, right? Sometimes we're looking at our marriage and we can only see these momentary broken decisions. Sometimes we're looking at our family and we can only see the momentary brokenness, right? Some of us, we're thinking about these holidays that are coming up and we're about to encounter all these people and all we can see is the momentary brokenness and all we can think is, I don't want to go there. There's nothing there for me. I can't do it. I'm too hurt. I've got to protect. Or if I go, I'm going to lay into all of them because I got to have the power. And we all know the loudest, angriest person in the room gets the power. Or you can ask God. You say, what are you doing? What are you doing? I know you don't hate those people. But what are you doing? And how can I be a part of it? What are you doing? And how can I give everything that I'm trying to protect myself with and every bit of power I'm trying to keep for myself? How can I lay it down at your feet and be a part of whatever you're doing in that situation? Some of you guys have tough family relationships you're going to walk into. Some of you have tough friendships. Some of you have tough business situations right now. Right? And you can't see it. You can't see how there could be any good. But God's saying, I work all things to the good. I work all things to the good, ultimately. And can you see the end game? Can you die to now so that you can live to the end game? I want you guys reflect on that, and then I'm going to give you some questions that you can have around your table if you want after that. You ready? Let's do it. We'll all stand. We'll worship one more song.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken.
God, just confess. We want to hold back from you. We want to hold back from you. We want to keep a little bit for ourselves. We want to keep a little bit for a rainy day. God, we don't trust that you're going to give us everything. And so we don't give you everything. I pray that you would help us with that this week. God, I pray that we would be people with great indicators that come after the comma. God, with great stories for people to look to and say, oh, that's what it means. That's what it's like. I had no idea. Didn't know that that's what it was. Not that they would see us and think about us, but that they would see us and see what you can do. Speaking of what you can do, thank you for this food. Thank you for always taking care of us. Thank you for providing for us. God, I pray for our time around the tables. God, that we would be people who give and live freely with each other. In Jesus' name, amen. So you guys can sit. A couple of things. Just want to, one thing in particular I want to say real quick. I'll remind you guys, next Sunday night. So for some of you, I think like sitting at Jesus' feet, right? Some of you are like, yes, you're Mary. Like you're like, yes, I want to do that. And so if that's you, next Sunday night for an hour, 6 to 7 p.m., we're having Chad and Michelle Sonnedecker come in and lead worship. And the reason we're doing that is because we want Justin and we want Mark and we want Kim to be able to just come and sit at Jesus's feet and to not feel any pressure to have to perform in those moments. And so we're just going to create space for an hour for you to worship, and I will be available. Christy will be available. Jane will be available. Maybe we'll tap a couple other people if you need prayer for anything during that hour. We just want to spend some ministry time together. So that is next Sunday night from 6 to 7 p.m. Nick, what do we need to know about eating?
Nothing really other than if you have any questions about specific ingredients or quantities of the water is really great too, just ask. I know there's will be some others that have pine nuts, so just ask if you have any questions.
What dish has pine nuts? Can you tell us that? Spanish pie. All right. That it?
That's a really good question. I couldn't even explain it, but it's probably a good question. I'll throw out salad, cranberry, spinach pie, mac and cheese. This one's stuffing.
Yes.
I haven't looked at this one. I don't know. Vegetable casserole. One casserole is a. Okay. The
All right. On your mark, get set, go. Go eat. The rule.